Welcome back to the Long Acres Finance channel, where the focus is on dividend growth investing. Let me start off today by asking you a question. Which dividend growth stock would you prefer? One that just announced a 30% dividend increase, or one that has a 10-year streak of consistent 10% dividend increases? I personally prefer the latter. A super high dividend increase is nice, but I would much rather prefer many years of consistent above average dividend growth. After thinking about this question for a little while, and my preference, I set out to find all companies that have a long and strong history of stable dividend growth. And today I want to share my findings with you. The title of this episode already revealed that I was able to find 86 companies that are real dividend growth machines. Before we see who these companies are, and which of them I think are the best, let me preface the analysis with a brief explanation of how this list was put together. I really only focused on two parameters in my search: the number of years of consistent dividend growth, and the dividend growth rate itself. For the dividend growth rate, I didn't actually look at the past full decade, because this would require more research than I have time for. Instead, I looked at the 1, 3, 5, and 10-year dividend growth rates that are readily available through various outlets online. I scanned the universe of dividend growth stocks to find only those that have at least a 10% dividend growth rate for each of the periods I just mentioned. In case you're wondering of what use this list can be to you, well, each of these 86 companies has a consistent streak of above average dividend growth for at least the last decade. I think using a quality shortlist like this one is a great starting place to find the next dividend stock you can consider for your portfolio. While there is no guarantee any of these dividend stocks will be great investments, they do have a proven dividend growth track record that is not easy to achieve, and a management team that is committed to this dividend policy. In my book, these two factors count for something. The average 10-year dividend growth rate for all 86 dividend growth machines was 17.19%, with the lowest growth rate being 10.03% and the highest 42.82%. The current dividend yields offered by these 86 dividend stocks range from a low of 0.27% to a high of 10.41%, with the average being 2.08%. These ranges are pretty wide, but I believe you will find at least one stock amongst this bunch that you like. Let's start off by breaking down the results in terms of the number of years of dividend growth. The minimum cutoff for this metric was 10 years, but I was able to find 4 companies with a history of dividend growth longer than 50 years. In my opinion, Lowe's is the best company out of these 4 long-term dividend growers. The reason I have selected Lowe's as number 1 is because its dividend growth during the past decade exceeded 15% for each time period measured. The company has a 10-year dividend growth rate of 19.05%, a 5-year dividend growth rate of 17.98%, a 3-year dividend growth rate of 18.57%, and its most recent annual dividend growth was a pleasant 36.18%. Lowe's has been increasing its dividend payments for 60 years now. That's longer than I, and probably most of you, have been alive. To me, that is an unbelievable dividend growth streak to achieve. And even more impressive is the fact that this rate of dividend growth is not slowing down. The more I learn about this business, the more I like it. Lowe's is one of my core positions across all of my portfolios, and I look forward to a prosperous dividend journey with this home improvement retailer. The company I ranked as second best amongst these 4 dividend growth machines is Parker-Hannifin, that has a 66-year streak of dividend growth. The reason I believe it deserves the second best overall spot is not because of the super long dividend history, but because of the trend in its recent dividend growth rate. Parker-Hannifin has not been growing its dividend faster than companies ranked 3 and 4, but its dividend has progressively improved as we move out from a 10-year period all the way to the most recent dividend increase. The 10-year dividend growth rate for the company is 11.12%. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 11.37%. The 3-year dividend growth rate is 11.84%. And the most recent dividend increase was 20.44%. I know it's the higher than average recent dividend increase that's driving this trend, but Parker-Hannifin is one of only a few companies on this list to have a positive trend, and I think it deserves its second best overall ranking because of it. The third best overall dividend growth machine is Cisco, with a 52-year streak of dividend growth. After more than half a century of consistent dividend growth, this consumer staple isn't slowing down its dividend increases. The company has a 10-year dividend growth rate of 11.48%, a 5-year dividend growth rate of 19.57%, a 3-year dividend growth rate of 16.48%, and most recently, it increased its dividend by 31.67%. These are very impressive numbers that also have a positive trajectory. And the final and 4th best dividend growth machine is Nordson Corporation, with a 59-year history of dividend growth. Nordson wasn't far off from Cisco, and it really came down to a slightly more impressive short-term dividend growth streak from Cisco to give it an edge. Here are the numbers for Nordson. The company has a 10-year dividend growth rate of 15.1%, a 5-year dividend growth rate of 13.57%, a 3-year dividend growth rate of 13.38%, and most recently increased its dividend by 30.78%. The combined number of years of dividend growth from these 4 companies is 237 years. Now, if that isn't a proven track record, I don't know what is. If you're looking for a core holding in your dividend portfolio, I believe these 4 companies are a great place to start your research. The dividend yields they currently offer may not be too appealing, as they range from 1.14% to 2.38%, but you're likely to get stability, consistency, and perhaps years of strong dividend growth. Okay, that's 4 dividend growth machines down, with 82 more remaining. The next tier of this list was capped for companies with at least 25 years of dividend growth. While 25 years isn't as impressive as 50 years, it's still a very long period of time, and a business must be very good at what they do to reach this milestone. I found a total of 9 dividend companies that met this threshold, and have a 10% dividend growth history during the past decade. Number 1 on this list is General Dynamics, with a 31-year history of dividend growth. The company is one of only a handful of dividend growth companies that has an average growth rate above 15% during the past decade. Its long-term 10-year dividend growth rate is 15.44%. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 20.88%. The 3-year dividend growth rate is 16.93%. And the most recent dividend increase was 35.64%. A very impressive track record as the company sets out on its 4th decade of consistent dividend growth. In a very close second place, we have Sherwin-Williams with 44 years of dividend growth under its belt. Sherwin also offered more than 15% dividend growth during the last decade, but it was slightly lower than General Dynamics. The 10-year dividend growth rate for Sherwin is 16.41%. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 15.35%. The 3-year dividend growth rate is 20.14%. And the most recent dividend increase was 15.39%. Also a very impressive dividend growth streak and a long dividend growth history. In the 3rd place, I have Graco with a history of 25 years of dividend growth. Graco's dividend growth streak during the past decade did not exceed 15%, but it has progressively improved as time went on. The 10-year dividend growth rate is 13.24%. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 16.92%. The 3-year dividend growth rate is 19.77%. And the most recent dividend increase was 38.63%. I'll be very curious to see if this upward trend will continue for the company as it embarks on its next 25 years of dividend growth. In 4th place is Canadian National Railway with 27 years of dividend growth. The company has a similar upward dividend growth trajectory as Graco, but weaker overall increases. The 10-year dividend growth rate is 11.82%. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 12.42%. The 3-year dividend growth rate is 12.66%. And most recently, it increased its dividend by 13.34%. Companies ranked 5 to 9 do not have a 15% dividend growth history, nor do they have an upward trajectory. So I used my best judgment to rank them based on consistency and overall growth levels. I'll go through these 5 a little more quickly, otherwise we would be here all day to review all 86 dividend growth machines. So in 5th place we have T. Rowe Price Group with 36 years of dividend growth, and 1 to 10 year dividend growth rates ranging from 13 to 16%. In 6th place we have Franklin Electric with 30 years of dividend growth, and 1 to 10 year dividend growth rates of 10 to 12%. In 7th place we have NextEra Energy with 28 years of dividend growth, and 1 to 10 year dividend growth rates of 10 to 11%. In 8th place we have Stryker Corporation with 29 years of dividend growth, and 1 to 10 year dividend growth rates of 10 to 12%. And rounding out the list in 9th place we have Roper Technologies, also with 29 years of dividend growth, and 1 to 10 year dividend growth rates of 10 to 16%. I placed Roper in last place because its most recent 1-year dividend growth rate was just 10.01%, barely above the minimum threshold. Current dividend yields for these 9 companies range from a low of 0.62% for Roper to a high of 4% for T. Rowe. I think all of these dividend stocks are wonderful businesses, and with at least 25 years of dividend growth under their belts, they have proven they are committed to a long-term dividend growth policy. Okay, with 13 dividend growth machines covered thus far, we are left with 73 more that have a dividend growth streak of at least 10 years but less than 25 years. I'll talk about the top ranked companies on this list and give you a quick look at the rest. In first place, I have Brunswick Corporation with 10 years of dividend growth. The company is one of only 2 dividend growth machines to average a dividend growth rate higher than 20% during the last decade. The long-term 10-year dividend growth rate for Brunswick is 42.82%. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 22.31%. The 3-year dividend growth rate is 29.12%, and the most recent increase was 58.3%, a very strong first decade for Brunswick that currently offers a dividend yield slightly below 2%. In a close second place, we have Tractor Supply with 13 years of dividend growth, and also a dividend growth rate higher than 20%. The long-term 10-year dividend growth rate for Tractor Supply is 26.25%. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 23.81%. The 3-year dividend growth rate is 31.04%. And the most recent increase was 56.53%. The next 3 companies all have dividend growth rates above 15% and an upward trajectory. Goldman Sachs, with 11 years of dividend growth, is ranked number 3, with an 18.15% 10-year dividend growth rate that only got better during shorter time intervals. Universal Forest Products, with 10 years of dividend growth, is ranked number 4, with a 19.63% 10-year dividend growth rate. And Pool Corporation, with 12 years of dividend growth, is ranked number 5, with a 19.35% 10-year dividend growth rate. The next 8 companies all have dividend growth rates above 15%, but they do not have an upward trend. Number 6 is Power Integrations, with 10 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 20.4%. Number 7 is Best Buy, with 19 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 17.32%. Number 8 is Amphenol, with 11 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 28.65%. Number 9 is Primerica, with 12 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 30.73%. Number 10 is Booz Allen Hamilton Holdings, with 11 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 24.42%. Number 11 is Hawthorne Bankshares, with 11 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 16.34%. Number 12 is Premier Financial Corporation, with 11 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 31.4%. And number 13 is United Health Group, with 13 years of dividend growth and a 10-year dividend growth rate of 23.97%. I'll show you the last 60 companies on the screen here, 10 at a time, while I talk about some of the more attractive dividend yields on the list. Of the 13 companies I just mentioned, Best Buy and Premier Financial Corporation have the best current dividend yield, both more than 4%. Best Buy is actually very close to 5% right now. The highest dividend yield amongst these 86 dividend growth machines comes from Arbor Realty Trust, that ranks as number 64 on the 10 plus years of dividend growth. Arbor Realty Trust currently has a dividend yield of 10.41% and a history of 10 years of dividend growth. The company has a long-term 10-year dividend growth rate of 34.57%, a 5-year dividend growth rate of 16.86%, a 3-year dividend growth rate of 10.92%, and the most recent increase was 12.31%. A very unique balance of high yield and high dividend growth that you don't typically find amongst dividend growth stocks. Another attractive dividend yield comes from Fidelity National Financial at 4.5%. The company ranks as number 38 on the 10 plus years of dividend growth list. It has a 3, 5, and 10-year dividend growth rate of about 12%, and most recently increased its dividend by nearly 22%. That's pretty much it for dividend yields above 4%. Just 5 out of these 86 dividend growth machines are high-yielding stocks today. But that was somewhat expected. Typically, a high-yielding dividend stock will struggle to offer fast dividend growth. The benefit of a fast dividend growth rate is received through patience. If you can wait for a decade and pick up a dividend stock that will consistently increase its dividend at a high rate, your yield on cost will grow substantially. For example, a 10% dividend growth rate over a decade will increase the dividend rate about 2.6 times. This means if you started with a 1% dividend yield, after 10 years, your yield on cost will be about 2.6%. Or if you started with a 3% dividend yield, after 10 years, your yield on cost will be about 7.8%. So you forego more dividend income today for faster growth and more income in the future. A 15% dividend growth rate over a decade will increase the dividend rate about 4 times, and a 20% dividend growth rate will increase the dividend rate about 6.2 times. Look, there's no guarantee that all or any of these 86 dividend growth machines will continue to grow their dividends at 10% plus rates next year or for the next decade. But some of these companies have already a few decades of growth behind them, and they don't seem to be slowing down. I own many of the dividend stocks listed here, and while I don't expect they will all have wonderful futures, I think at least a few of them should. All you need to have a successful dividend investing journey is to pick up a few winners along the way, and patiently wait for them to grow your wealth. This list is meant to be a starting point for further research. I share this file along with many others on my Patreon page, so if you're part of that community, you can check this list out right now. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate if you gave it a like and subscribe to the channel for more dividend growth investing content. Thank you for watching and see you next time.